day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
Here in Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners, thanks to all of you, including Chris Zaragoza, Jim Hart, Logan Larson, and 3 new patrons.
Hey.
The Triumvirate, the Threesome, the best ever, David, John, and Declan.
Well,
guys.
welcome to you all. It's DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand what's going on a little bit better with each other. How are we doing? How are you doing, Scott Johnson?
Oh, just keeping it real. It's really cold here, and I hate that. And my wife's on a cruise in Mexico, and I kind of hate that.
You are keeping it real.
So I'm
really
holding down the
really
fort, trying to keep things happening, getting a dog's teeth pulled, things like that. It's been a blast. I'm having a great week.
My sister-in-law had to have her dog's teeth pulled, too, because her dog's 12 years old, and it's just,
Yeah, they age out. Their teeth fall out. If you don't take care of them, they get infected. So
Just
we have
like
to do all
people.
of that. Lots of, just like people. I'm looking forward to those days as well.
I was at the vet recently with my dog, and they said, "When's the last time you had his teeth cleaned?" And I was like, never. And
you're like, Otis,
yeah,
have you not been flossing?
Has not been flossing.
Take care of your feet.
Yeah, I'm
Your
sorry.
teeth.
I'm a bad mother. What I am good at, though, is wanting to check the news. So let's all do it together.
Let's do it. Alibaba is over here like, stop looking at DeepSeek. If you want Chinese AI, we've been here for years. They just launched Qwen 2.5 Max AI, claiming that model surpasses DeepSeek V3, GPT-4o, and Llama 3.1405B. Now, this is not comparing to the R1 model that DeepSeek released last week. That's the one that led to the sell-off of NVIDIA stock on Monday. However, it is compared to DeepSeek V3, which is also a very efficient model from DeepSeek. So it's an impressive release for Alibaba. DeepSeek's V2 model previously triggered a price war with its lower cost open source approach, prompting Alibaba to cut its model prices by up to 97%. So that's why Alibaba's making a big deal out of this.
All right, we're going to be talking about models quite a bit on the show because that's what's going on in the news. Huawei announced that the distilled DeepSeek R1 AI model is free on Huawei's Model Arts Studio platform. That's meant to work well with Huawei's Ascend GPUs, with some researchers saying that Huawei's Ascend 910C may be capable of running and even training large models. DeepSeek trained R1 on NVIDIA's H800 GPUs at first. However, U.S. export restrictions have limited the company's ability to sell high-performance chips in China.
Comcast's Xfinity internet service is one of the first to roll out the Internet Engineering Task Force's L4S open standard, which gives you a low latency connection. They've launched this in a few of their cities, not all of their cities. So if you're in Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco, a few other places, you can get it. It works when you're using specific games. So it's not going to work on everything. But if you are using specific games on Steam or NVIDIA's GeForce Now service, very latency sensitive. FaceTime on Apple is working with this, and some of the apps on Meta's VR headsets as well. Comcast claims that its implementation of L4S can cut latency by up to 78%.
I will believe this when I see it. Sorry to bust in, but I will.
Are you in a Comcast area?
I am. Salt Lake's got a huge Comcast up here, and
hopefully
I
you get it.
probably get
Are
to
you
test
an
it.
Xfinity customer?
Currently
Is this
not,
something-
but I might consider it. If they can prove that number out, I might go back. We'll see.
The U.S. Copyright Office issued an advisory paper Wednesday that it said using AI systems to assist in the creative process doesn't undermine the copyright of the resulting work. However, a human's creativity must also be present. Just entering prompts, not enough to claim authorship.
Yeah, this is setting the boundaries. Like, just using AI doesn't invalidate your claim, but only using AI also not.
Make a picture of a pig. That's
Yeah,
not,
they actually used a picture of a cat in the 41-page
Of course they
paper.
did.
They're like, we put this in Gemini. This prompt alone is not enough to be copyrighted. So there's a nice picture of a cat in there. I give them respect for that. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Starlink's space-based text messaging service in partnership with T-Mobile has expanded beyond Android 15 devices. It now includes iPhones running iOS 18.3. The service is being tested with select users who signed up for the beta. It's only messaging support at the moment, though the service does plan to expand to voice and data for better connectivity in remote areas.
All right, I said we were going to be talking about LLMs today, and we will do that. OpenAI tells the Financial Times that it has evidence that DeepSeek used OpenAI's proprietary models to train DeepSeek's rival system through a technique called distillation, potentially violating OpenAI's terms of service. Distillation, not uncommon in AI development. This is something that, if you work in the industry, you know what's going on here. But Bloomberg notes that OpenAI and Microsoft previously investigated and then blocked DeepSeek's accounts for suspected misuse of OpenAI's API. DeepSeek's seemingly overnight success. I mean, DeepSeek has been around for a while, but has gotten a lot of attention as of late because it apparently had limited resources and had some people who know the space suggesting that its models may have been trained on GPT-4 outputs. OpenAI continues to implement countermeasures to protect its intellectual property. So, all right. So a few things going on here. OpenAI saying DeepSeek, you used our model without our consent, right? And for that reason, it's a violation of terms of service. OpenAI has also been accused of doing something similar, scraping the net, scraping various publisher sites. And so you've got a lot of folks online being like, who are we mad at here? Are we
I believe
mad at
Engadget
DeepSeek?
used
Are we
the
mad
phrase,
at OpenAI?
what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander, OpenAI.
Yeah,
right.
definitely some of that going on. I mean, everybody I know that's in art, music, writing, sort of artistic endeavors, let's say, are all grinning ear to ear because they think this is very funny because their stuff is being freely scraped all the time by OpenAI and other models and other companies without any compensation and without any recognition or permission. So it does seem like they're saying this with a straight face, how they believe this is happening. They're starting an investigation, all of that, as if we're all on board with this idea that nobody should scrape that data.
Wait, hold on. How are they saying it as if we're all on board?
Not on board.
There's not like a picture of Sam Altman going, "Hey, everybody, we all agree."
No, you're right. I don't want to put words in their mouth. You're right.
I think there is an underlying it's a Chinese company, that kind of thing.
Well, that's
There's a lot
definitely
of
a thing.
You're gonna get some people
Implied
being
stuff,
like,
sure.
okay,
Yeah,
let's do that.
let me correct the record. What I mean by that is they are saying it, and then we're out here reading it and going, "Oh, okay." So you're mad at them
funny.
for scraping your data. Well, you scraped our data, and
we're
we were
mad at you
you
for scraping our data. Yeah,
everybody's mad at everybody for scraping each other's data. Like at some point, the cat's out of the bag.
It's not the same though. Just to set the rules of the road, you can still be mad at them and think it's funny and everything. I'm not trying to invalidate any of those feelings or thoughts, but what writers and artists are mad at is taking publicly available information and using it to train a model. They're saying that's a violating of copyright. OpenAI and others are saying it's not a violation of copyright. We didn't copy it. We used it to feed our model the way that Google uses your copyrighted works to feed its search index. It's very similar. People don't mind the search index because they feel they get a benefit from it. Although there are some lines, as we've seen with news publishers suing Google, right? What OpenAI is mad at DeepSeek for is DeepSeek using its API, right? It's not mad at DeepSeek for copying. It's mad at DeepSeek for using its data. It's slurped up, if they're correct. It's accused of, let's say, slurping up a large amount of data out of the API without permission, abusing the privilege of that API. Also, there are restrictions on what you can do with what you get out of an API. That's true of any API. And if DeepSeek distilled the text and trained its current model on it without permission, then that is also a violation of the terms of service. Now, that one gets closer to what the artists and the writers are complaining about, but it's still not a copyright argument. It's a terms of service argument.
Right.
You may not care, and I get that, but just to explain,
No, it's a good distinction.
It's not exactly the same thing.
It's a good distinction, and it's also to bring up one of the original OG beefs of the AI, training stuff coming out a couple years ago now. The big original beef was, wait a minute, I can go to this thing and say, please draw me this picture in the style of so-and-so, and it'll do it. That to that artist meant they not just scraped work to reference it like a search engine would. They scraped it to be able to create new work in the style of somebody who spent a lifetime building it and gave it to a machine without knowing it or giving it permission to. So that's the OG beef. This brings that beef back up into the sunlight a little bit because it does. They can make that argument that this is just scraping the web. It's freely available stuff. You put your art up on Instagram. Yeah, but I didn't put it up there with the express written consent that a machine could learn my style, do it, and skip me entirely. That is, I think, still a valid beef that artists have with this thing.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Yeah, but it's a different beef than the one OpenAI has with DeepSeek.
I think you're right. I think it's just
yeah.
all kind of together is the problem. So there's not a lot of separation. I can go to ChatGPT right now and go, make something in the style of so-and-so artist, and it'll do it. But it also will let me
But also,
give
does
me
it
some
do
history.
it really well?
I would argue no. That's the one thing I've learned the most about all this is it's gotten kind of worse at it, not better. In some cases, like everyone's freaking out about new video tools and stuff, but I think the stuff's more recognizable and kind of cheap looking the more they do it. So my opinion aside, that's a good point. But but does it matter? Like at the end of the day, data is everything from visual to written to history to current events to math to science to everything. So they just scrape everything up into one pile and say, it's what's available to us. And then someone else takes that data from them, cut in line, basically. It's kind of what they did. DeepSeek sort of like butted in. And if they did that, I get why OpenAI is mad. I'd be mad if I was OpenAI.
Except I think that's my point, is they're not mad at them for doing the slurping. They're mad at them for the amount and the permission. Like OpenAI trains on synthetic data. There's tons of open source models. What DeepSeek has said publicly is, yes, we did distill data from open source models and open models like the ones from Meta. They have not said that they distilled it from OpenAI. That's the beef, is that they're not admitting if they did it. And OpenAI thinks maybe they did it. OpenAI is only saying, seems to have come from China. And we all know what's going, but I don't know, maybe Alibaba did it, not DeepSeek. But whatever the point is, it's not that they were training. Nobody's thinks it's controversial to distill data and train off of it. It's actually a way to be efficient. What's controversial is, did they violate the terms of service and do it without permission? And are they claiming they have a really efficient way of training data that doesn't need a bunch of GPUs, when in fact all they did was distill GPT data?
Yeah, I mean they have a valid question about that, whether or not they can turn that into any actionable anything. I don't know. It just feels like the genie's out of the bottle floating around. It's like we're just all. I'm not. This isn't even me complaining that they've got data. It's just like it's out there now.
OpenAI's remedy here is to cut them off from the API, which I believe they've already done. So,
all right.
Now they're just out there trying to do reputation management and say, hey, DeepSeek's training algorithms may not be as impressive as you think. Don't lose faith in OpenAI because they just distilled data, and everybody's doing that. That's not new.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Scott, as an artist, let's say, tomorrow you, look through some sort of OpenAI model and you see something that's very similar to what kind of work you would make organically.
Yeah.
That would probably be something that, as an artist, you're like, not feeling good about this. How do you feel about the next model taking that data and then further creating something that looks something like what you might make organically?
Well, Tom, correct me on this if I have it wrong, but that's what's interesting about what's happened this week and is continuing to happen, obviously, with this Alibaba news and probably more down the road, certainly more down the road. I think what happened is it suddenly went from, these are mystery boxes inside of gigantic data centers that none of us can come near, and they need more water to run those megawatt centers than we'll ever need to run entire cities. And it's just a big, untouchable place worth $500 million every time they invest money into it. Now it's worth billions and possibly trillions. So that's what we thought, or the common man thought that that's how this is all supposed to work. And suddenly DeepSeek comes along and says, and others, but they've been smaller and less seismic. They come along and go, you know what? It's open source, and you can run it on your freaking 4080 16 gig card you have at home. And that's this model anyway that you can run on there, because that's enough. You want more than that, you got to get some more hardware. But pretty much anybody can run it and do it and whatever. There's something about that is both kind of horrifying on the face of it, but also kind of freeing. And I'm not sure why I feel this way. I don't have a good way to articulate it yet. But it somehow feels more, because it's more not federated, it's not the right word. It's more sort of available. And you can go to GitHub and just get it. Suddenly that makes me go, oh, well, then this is like the rest of the internet. This is like when we were worried early on that if I put a drawing online, someone's going to take it. They're going to right-click and save that image. We don't care about that now. Nobody cares now. I mean, that's a dumb thing to do, to worry about it. We thought it was a thing we should worry about in those early days. And we've learned that that is not a problem. I think that this may be, if I'm parsing my own feelings right, I think this maybe looks at a future where we're just less concerned about the initial shock that they trained on my data. What? And instead it's just out there. Everything's out there all the time. I'm not saying it makes it better for those who are most concerned about it. I'm just saying it has changed my brain chemistry on it just a little bit. To wrap my head around it. Yeah.
What if you ran a side hustle where you just like offered training data based on like you just create a line of artwork just for training? For training
data? I mean, you could.
Models?
You could, like the feeling I've heard
like
from
being like a teacher. Right?
Yeah, I've had friends who want to do this.
OpenAI is going and signing contracts with big publishers to get their data legitimately and say, okay, we're not going to have any controversy about it. Yeah,
it's like you've gone to college and you have my brain.
Imagine this, Roger. To answer Roger's question, I think you could see a future not that far off where, let's say, you're a renowned comic book artist. You get hired by DC, Marvel, and everyone in between. You are a hot, sought-after dude to get the work done. One thing you might want to do when this becomes more democratized and more within your reach and not in some mystery box somewhere, you now have a computer that is trained on your background techniques. Like, how are you doing all your background art? What kind of ink are you using? What kind of pencil are you using? What sort of perspectives are you using? You trained it on that data, and now you have a computer assistant who is creating your backgrounds in seconds based on art you did that you
Well, you can do that right now.
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah. That I think it's just more in reach for regular folks now, and it will continue to be.
It's been in reach for regular folks. I just don't think people were aware of it. But that's not new. That's just getting maybe a little more attention on it now that you can do agentic models and you can do on-device models and the R1 model is really efficient at running more than others. So it is one of the better on, low space efficient models that we've seen. And Andrew Main, when I talked to him for DTNS briefing, gave it all kinds of credit for that. That's on the inferencing side though. The controversy has been on the training side. Like, did they figure out a way to train it on cheap GPUs? And like Justin was saying on Monday's Live, maybe they aren't, maybe they're using GPUs they shouldn't have and they don't want to admit it. What this shows is like, maybe they didn't need all those GPUs because they just trained off of GPT data, which Andrew May, when I interviewed him, also said that weeks ago when he was trying the V3 model from DeepSeek and he asked it what it was trained on, it would say it was trained on ChatGPT 4. It doesn't say that anymore, but for a while he's like, yeah, it was kind of telling me it used OpenAI's data, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, gonna be fun to watch.
It will be fun. We'll be watching it, whether or not it's fun.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, Technomensch pointed out that Microsoft has added DeepSeek's R1 model to the Azure AI Foundry platform on GitHub. So while they're investigating them, they're also offering it.
All right. In the latest effort to stop AI crawlers from ignoring robot.txt files that say no scraping allowed, but then scraping those sites anyway, somebody has created something called a tarpit. So, Roger, what is going on here?
So this is a story from Ars Technica, and they refer to this software developer as Aaron, and he's turned tar pits into traps for AI crawlers. So two things. What is a tar pit? A tar pit is essentially a program that sits on a server, and what it does is really just kind of is to delay incoming connections into the server. Oftentimes, it gives it effectively a runaround. So it might throw fake data or just have, in this case for the tar pits for AI crawlers, cause them to follow links that lead to other links that lead to other links, but it leads in the giant maze of nowhere. So they're effectively just spinning this AI crawler's wheels, scraping together absolutely nothing of something of very little use and spending a lot of time and resources on it. Originally developed for worms and spam bots, it was a way to just kind of up the ante on the return on investment. How much time is this spam out going to sit on the server and collect nothing or not be able to do anything? And in this way, Aaron has turned it to do the same thing with AI crawlers, which crawl sites. As you know, maybe last year, Weens, here it is. Mark Weens Kyle Weens from iFixit said that Anthropic's Claude bot was basically scraping their site in violation of the site's terms of service, as well as the robots TXT, and saying, quote, "You're not only taking our content without paying, you're tying up our DevOps resources. If you want to have a conversation about licensing our content for commercial use, we're right here."
Yeah, and they're certainly not alone in that. I mean, that's the big argument, right? From a variety of sides saying, like, hey, if you want to make a deal, let's make a deal, but don't do that, behind our back.
And so the idea behind this tar pit is just to basically create a bunch of traps that literally make those AI crawlers waste a lot of time, and for the company that might be employing them, wasting their server resources to troll through this site that may not lead anywhere. And the idea is really just to make it more of a hassle, and then have people just say, well, this is not really effective. Why don't we just talk to these people and maybe cough up some money to come to some sort of agreement? There are criticisms, however, one of which is it's malware effectively, and you want to be a little careful how you deploy it, because it can also run afoul of other things, including search bots or for search engines. And it does add a load to the server that you run it on. It's not like entirely risk-free. So if you get a lot of scrapers coming in, it's going to be chewing up a lot more of your server's time, just causing them to run around in circles. But I found it to be a very interesting tool that to kind of foul up the works. It's not. I would not say it's like super effective. A lot of AI companies have known about this for the past year, about similar tactics and are working ways to get around it. And a lot of them are moving away from just straight scraping of sites to more deep web learning.
We are at that stage, aren't we, where I feel like it's happened every time something like this happens. So with the web, it was, denial of service attacks or whatever. They still happen. But there's always something that gets in the way and says, oh, yeah, well, look at this. And then they disrupt the works or whatever. This feels, obviously, it's more sophisticated, and the fixes will be more sophisticated. But it is an interesting new phase of this where we're going to start seeing methods of circumvention like this one, or of disruption, and you'll see them get more sophisticated by both bad actors and good. Like, I don't know why I feel like this is a sign of maturity for even though it's immature, a lot of what this is, and it's like a protest in some ways. And
no, it's definitely a protest. It's very much of the Arthur Dent, I'm going to lie in front of the bulldozer so you don't take down my house from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah. And it also reminds me of that paper that a group of researchers from the University of Chicago released back in 2023 about a paper outlining Nightshade, which was a way to kind of poison, a data poisoning technique aimed at disrupting AI training processes by basically making changes to a few pixels in an artwork that you would then upload. So anything that scraped it would get false information out of it, causing it to generate chaotic or perhaps unpredictable results from trained on it. And I find it a very interesting kind of, maybe not technically, but more of just like, no, I'm gonna put some speed bumps. I know it won't stop you, but at least I'll be more of a hassle than it's worth. Hopefully.
Yeah. I don't know, it's fun to watch these things. I don't know why I think they're fun. Like this is bad, actually. It depends on your point of view, right? It depends on your point of view, but I don't like it.
To me, it's very much of kind of like watching a society, maybe more in a faster pace, but how you have a reaction for every action, and then you have a reaction to that reaction, and it just goes on and on. And it's just, for me, it's just a very, very fascinating look at humanity and society sort of arguing with each other, but maybe in less direct methods.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, the idea that, okay, let's go back to, Scott makes a piece of art. Somebody scrapes that piece of art. Scott says, but I know that you did that because I hid a little something in the metadata of my original piece of art. That is like, I don't really know how that helps anybody, but at least you say like, hey, I'm right.
I mean, to go back to what Scott was saying earlier, remember when they disabled right clicks and people say, well, then I'll just do a screen cap of the entire screen and then just cut it out. And
who disabled right clicks?
There were sites that disabled right clicks on.
I see.
There's a little bit of JavaScript went a very small way to do that for a while, and then it was easy to circumvent, and now blockers include blocking stuff like that. It's like, it's just sort of, anytime you say, I'm sorry, you're restricted, people go, oh, am I? And then they find a way around it.
Let me try another.
People amuse me.
I mean, in some ways it's good. How else do we find out about bugs?
That sounds very optimistic.
Bugs, crashes, issues, problems. Like, we find out a lot of this because somebody out there's poking at the bear. So sometimes it's good. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little bit cut off your nose to spite your face. Like, you're using too many of my server resources, so I'm going to make you stick around and use more of my server resources. But
I mean, you listen, if the ship's going to go down, I'm going to take you down with me. You thought you were
walking away from this?
Yeah, and also, I have not seen any evidence that any of these crawlers were dissuaded or forced to negotiate because of this either.
But it's really, for me, it's just the idea of like, I'm going to do something to protest. I'm going to make it slightly more of a hassle than it would have been.
Well, we don't make it a hassle for you to get in touch with us on the social networks. In fact, we've made it easy at DTNS Show. Now, I know there's 2 S's in there. That's the hard part, but that's it. At DTNS Show. And whether you're on X or Instagram or Threads or Blue Sky or Mastodon, that's where you go. At DTNS Show, you can talk to us, chat with us, see what we're talking about. And for video, TikTok and YouTube, it's at Daily Tech News Show. There you go. That's it. Nice. See you there.
Xbox head Phil Spencer made some comments about Xbox exclusivity on a recent podcast interview that raised some eyebrows. So, Scott, let's talk about what's going on here.
All right. So, Phil Spencer, known for, putting the word out there and then everybody later forgetting that he said things. This is kind of one of those examples, not entirely, but he basically came out and said, on the subject of exclusivity, that they were less interested in exclusivity than you might think for a platform like Xbox. And to me, this was just normal stuff because Phil's been saying this stuff forever. Microsoft themselves have been saying this forever. They want you to be able to play their games wherever you can. They've said out loud, Phil has in the past, that he wishes Game Pass would run on Switch. Nintendo won't let it right now anyway, so that's not an option. But they want to put it wherever they can put it, and that includes streaming and having it to your phone and putting it on a smart TV and everything else. So in this recent interview with Save State Plus, the host asked Spencer if the game Starfield will remain an Xbox and Windows exclusive, and he said no. Again, to some of us, not a surprise. He added, the world's biggest games are available in multiple places, and more creators are asking us, how do we stay connected when our game might be playable on all of those different places? We want Xbox to be absolutely the platform that enables that. This is them, over time, mind you, but this is them nonetheless redefining what it means to, or what the term Xbox even means. In the old days, in the original days, certainly it meant our new console. Here is our place. And they wanted exclusivity. They wanted you all to not go to Sony, not go to Nintendo, and instead go to them. That has changed very much in the last few years. I would say the last 10 years, they've sort of been on this journey. And I think that they are still going to always have a thing I can go buy, an actual Xbox to play on, at least for the foreseeable future, the next generation, certainly, whenever that happens. But I think they will care less and less, and they've already shown this. They care less and less where you get it. They just care that you get it. So whether that's Game Pass as a service or their games on different services, like being able to buy everything they make now on Steam, everything they make as much as possible on PlayStation, that's getting to be more and more. They got some big ones coming this year. They used to be exclusives. They are now going to PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation platform. And they're working with Nintendo to try to make Switch 2 a friendlier platform for Microsoft to put more games. Certainly it's got more power, potentially to play more of the library. His quote is, we want to, quote, attract gamers across a variety of different endpoints. The company is not reliant on console sales as their main source of revenue. And again, this is consistent with what they've been saying for quite a while. I just think what's happening now is he's starting to just say it every time. Instead of little hints and bits here and there about what their strategies are, I think he's just happy to say, hey, good news, everybody. Outer Worlds 2 is coming to PlayStation 5. And everybody's like, oh, that's an exclusive. In fact, you own that company. How dare you do this? And they're like, this is what we're going to do. This is the future. We don't care where you play it. We care that you play it. Play it wherever you want to play it.
And that we've charged you somehow for it.
Somehow we've made money from you. Exactly.
Well, so, I mean, in a way, they're sort of doing what Epic and Steam have done for the PC side, which is a digital store, but ideally it's whatever platform you have it on. And in some cases, they would like it to be with TVs that, you get straight from the store with like, an Xbox app that you can click on, which I think is very interesting because then it looks like Xbox is less of a PS5 Switch kind of competitor, more of a competitor to Steam. And like the Steam Deck and Epic.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the thing is, and we talked about this last Wednesday, I think it was right here on this show, we talked about how the survey respondees for everybody going to GDC said 80% of them are working on PC titles as the first platform, and they may port elsewhere, but that's where they're starting. Like the PC business has never been better in the terms of games. That's largely due to platforms like Steam, to a much smaller degree Epic, but credit where it's due. They have their imprint. And you're right. As they've experimented out with this with their handheld and spawned a bunch of not copycats, but competitors in that market. And now the word that Steam OS is going to come to some of those competitors. Like there's clearly a big shift happening there. Microsoft would like to be where all of that is happening as well. I think they see the writing on the wall. Like say what you want about Microsoft's strategies or their history or anything like that. They're smart people and they know what's coming. And what's coming is almost an entirely digital exclusive gamed library kind of across the board. I know people who love collecting their discs and having their physical media are groaning and rolling their eyes at me right now. I'm with you to an extent, but it is happening. Whether we like it or not, this is where things are headed. They would like to be at the forefront of that. They would like you to be playing their games and their products wherever you can. And the big question right now is there forward thinking about it and forward PR about it? Is that going to help them be at the pinnacle of that shift? Because the shift is coming. Will it be Microsoft? Will it be Sony? Will it be somebody else entirely? Will it be Steam? Valve. I'm not so sure that Valve isn't everyone's worst nightmare at this point because they just are kind of killing it right now. So then, yeah.
But where does that leave Sony in the PS5? Because they invested a lot of money in that.
Well, I mean, we're well over half the generation over, so they're already looking at PS6.
It leaves them with a lot of money, having sold a lot of PS5s.
But
where are they going? It's not where they've left them. I get what you're asking. Is like, how do they catch up?
How do they pivot?
Yeah,
I mean, they've done some stick the big toe in the pool to see if it's warm enough with the release on Steam of several first party title, or actually more than at least almost a dozen.
Yeah, it's kind of like Nintendo with its mobile strategy, where they've got a little bit of one, but it's not like you can play all the Nintendo games on Android. So.
But I mean, if they want to compete on that in that area, I mean, they're going to have to there needs to be a seismic shift, and in their approach.
Yeah, their approach right now is not moving that much. They're letting Microsoft make it, and I'm not so sure that that's the wrong thing to do. Maybe it's right to take your time. But they have a PlayStation 6 in the works. Microsoft's got an Xbox follow-up in the works, and the Switch 2 has just been announced. We've got stuff
It
coming.
might be really smart for Sony to just let Microsoft make all the mistakes with Game Pass and then just swoop in with a Sony version of it at some point.
That is not a bad way to look at it. You know, you don't do the iPod first. You wait for Diamond Rio to fumble around for about a year, and then you go, you know what? It's our time. It's now. Yeah, and that may be what they do. I don't know. I don't know. But if they do, if Microsoft has their way, let's just say that they're right about the future landscape of everything. This could set them up for the next 50 years of digital interactive entertainment.
50 years? Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how this industry goes. It goes on forever. It could set them up as if not the chief player, a major player for good. It looks very different. It's no longer who's dominating your living room with a box. Like, it's a very different reason to be on top. It may even be kind of opaque as to how they lead. It's not the same as going to every house and seeing all your friends have the same box anymore. It's what are you playing and where are you playing it? And there's no shortage of places to play things. So all they have to do is figure out how to execute on this idea that they've been milking for 10 years and go for it. Sony could Sony disrupt it? Maybe. Do they have the pockets Microsoft has? No. I mean, not even close.
But they don't even have the infrastructure back end to do what Microsoft.
No, they rent Microsoft's back end to do what they need to do on the back end. So it's all
Which
that
is
part
fine.
of it.
I know
is weird.
people make a big deal about it, but that's just because Microsoft has different businesses. So Microsoft also doesn't have banking, and Sony does. So these are big companies.
Yeah, Microsoft doesn't have a film studio. Sony does.
Yeah,
I mean, there's like advantages, and disadvantages across the
not the
thing.
Same. Not the same.
But we're talking about such an enormous and fast-growing industry, despite all its layoffs and issues.
I do look for the day when I have the three apps of like the Switch app, the PlayStation app, and the Xbox app, and I can play from the same place, and I don't need to have, I can just jump from one to the other, same way I jump from one streaming service to another, depending on the show I want to watch is available.
I think that's exactly what we're heading for. I think that's it. And you'll have other players. It won't be Microsoft only, but it will be a competitive space where they want to lead, and I think that's why they talk the way they do now.
Who will be the Tubi of gaming?
That's right.
Stay tuned.
And hopefully who will be the Tubi that lets me stop. I will pay for Tubi to get rid of commercials. I know it's an unrelated issue.
That's called Netflix.
I love that, but Tubi's awesome and has so much awesome trash
movies
in it.
Tubi's the Tubi hook isn't the ads; it's the ability to pick up, to come back later and pick up where you.
Well, it's not even just that.
You can do that in Netflix. You can pick up where you left
off. It's just that Tubi has so much old 70s sci-fi genre trash that I love. I can't stand the commercials. Just let me pay out of it. I will pay them. They won't let me. Anyway.
You can buy those shows. You just have to buy them.
That's true. That's true.
All right, everybody. Well, none of us are children, but we were at one point. And a lot of children actually do have some sway when it comes to technology. The nonprofit organization Common Sense Media surveyed more than 1,000 children in the U.S. about technology. Tom, I have a feeling that the answers may surprise us.
I don't know if they will, actually. And thank you for saying we're not children, even though we're acting like it. What the kids said, and it was like 1,047 kids, and they were 1,045 kids surveyed with their parents. So the parents and the kids sat down, answered the survey together. So maybe there's a little, coloring of their opinions here because the adults were with them, but they had to be. They don't trust tech companies, is what we found out. Around 6 in 10 teens said that major tech companies cannot be trusted to care about their mental health and well-being or to protect people's safety. Slightly more than half of the teens reported they had low levels of trust in tech companies making ethical and responsible design decisions. There's a lot of stuff in here about not trusting them to keep your personal information secure or to be inclusive or fair, not trusting them to be good and ethical with AI, although more than 50% actually thought they would be okay with AI. But just in general, it expressed some distrust. We've talked on the show before about the fact that people have turned against big tech since this show started 11 years ago. And certainly during our careers, it's gone from like, ooh, technology, that's fun, to like, oh, technology, that's scary. I wondered when I first saw that they were doing this survey whether the kids would be a little more trusting, would have a little more positivity. And it turns out they actually look like they might have less positivity about tech companies. So I don't know, man. What do y'all think of this? Is it just mean that we are covering an unpopular area now? Like technology is an evil in most people's eyes?
I think this is
Roger. You got young kids. I would love to know your thoughts.
I mean, they love the services, and that's all they see. They don't have the concept of the service as a business that makes money.
And your kids are younger than the ones surveyed here, so that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, they're both. And so they don't necessarily have an opinion about that. They hear my opinion a lot. And so that might sway them one way or another. But I think this is, I don't want to say it's a natural, but this is part of the typical cycle of an industry, right? I'm sure at the I'm sure at the start of the electronics industry or a consumer electronics industry was going to bring all sorts of great innovations and convenience items.
Well, you're reminded me of the Downton Abbey scene, where they bring electricity into the house, and everybody's like, "That's dangerous. Why are we doing that? You won't bring electricity down into my cooking
Change
area."
is scary.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
but I mean, there were all these things that sprung from it, and there was a lot of enthusiasm. In the 50s, we had all sorts of new inventions, new technologies, new products and compounds and chemicals that was going to change the face of the world, and it did, but not.
It's
the
like
way
a
we
bell
thought.
curve, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
New technology is scary, then it's fun because it can do stuff, and then it's tired and old and
Yeah.
But
Well,
then
and I think when you're talking about teenagers, which we are, for this conversation specifically, not every teenager is going to be like, oh, my mom and dad, just tell me what I want to hear, and then I agree with them. But I think there is a certain trickle down kind of thing that happens when you are young and impressionable. And so I do think that you have a lot of young folks saying like, yeah, big tech is, they're trying to, steal our babies, that kind of thing. And it's not,
I have
it's sort of
friends
like, it's not
with
really.
I have friends with teen kids, and their teen kids think that they are horrible people for using AI. For not being opposed to AI because it is stealing the copyright like we talked about, and it uses all the water and for the cooling and uses all the energy and all of that. I mean, some of this is just when you're in your teens, you are more idealistic. I certainly was when I was in my teens. And so the message out there is big tech is bad for you. But why has that become the message, right? That's what I've continually.
I think there's two things that are happening that are connecting together. One is the big business aspect of tech, which is I see these multi-billionaires setting.
It went from being startups and scrappy, like Sergey and
also,
Larry in their garage
if
to
you're 16
these are the biggest
years
companies
old,
in the world. Yeah.
If you're 16 years old, you look at this company and it's like, okay, all these people are making a lot of money. Like, do I want to be a part of that? A lot of younger folks say I don't corporate atmosphere is does not sound good to me.
We still think of Google, at least I do, as the startup, as like the Silicon Valley, like shaking things up. Teenagers look at Google like it's IBM, or US Steel.
That's exactly
been around forever.
And that's exactly it. I mean, teens. Are not only idealistic, they're also sort of not anti-mainstream. What's the not anti-authoritarian?
Anti-authoritarian, contrary.
They're more contrarian, right? They're more anti-establishment, right? They're just more like
anti-establishment is a good one.
I don't like this business, and all they
because it reminds them of the yesteryear that they're trying to reinvent.
Right.
We grew up in it, and we saw tech, and we saw the tech company. We looked at the technology. I think when you're younger, you tend to look at the business that's producing the technology first.
And tech wasn't big business when we were growing up. Big
Yeah.
business was banks and railroads.
it was
Well,
a
if you
scrappy-
remember, to use your Google comparison, Tom, those guys had that whole "don't be evil" thing, and we really glommed onto it. We were like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, look at these guys sticking it to the man. It was punching up as
They
grew.
now
Exactly.
they are the man.
Yeah.
And
Now they're the
thing
man.
with teens is now they're talking to people in their 20s who are complaining like, man, it's really hard to own a home or to get a job that pays as well as granddad or my dad got, because those opportunities.
I mean,
aren't
we were
available
saying
for-
that in the 90s too.
Exactly.
That part isn't new, but who's responsible is new.
Well,
right?
yeah, and the
Yeah.
target always shifts with each generation, and
Yeah.
the biggest targets right now are tech companies, because they're the ones when, hey, who has the $1 trillion evaluation? It's not GM. Who has who's showing up at the White House inauguration? There are all these things that
Apple was that little company that almost went out of business. Now it's like one of
Now
the
it's
biggest
the
companies
monster.
in the world.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and honestly, I don't think they're necessarily wrong about their attitudes. It's just kind of what happens. And I think, especially where we are economically, where so much of the money perceptually seems to be tied up in these large companies, whether it's investment, whether it's your data or whatever. There's just a natural glom, and it's like, yeah, I don't like that.
Well, plus your average 21-year-old is trying to afford an apartment, a one-room apartment for $2,000 a month, and can barely make ends meet.
Oh, yeah, and then
all
when
of that
they
stuff.
hear your story about, like, I was scrappy, I was eating ramen for every night, but I had my own place.
Yeah,
It
my
was a
rent
studio
was
apartment.
$300 exactly. So it's like
It's
I
like,
couldn't afford
like our
rent when I
parents
was
were
in my
like
20s,
trudge through the snow to go to school, and we were like, okay, grandma.
Yeah.
I know.
What's the
I
whole?
know.
Now it's
what's
like,
the phrase?
we
It's
used to,
I had to go uphill through the snow both ways.
yeah, but
Oh,
not
both-
that. What's
Right.
the? You're the hero. If you're the hero,
You're
long
always the
enough,
hero of your own story. Yeah.
No, you're a hero
No,
long
no.
enough. You become the villain or whatever it is.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You become the hero you want, but if you live long enough, then you'll become the
We
Right.
need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the one. No,
Bonnie Tyler.
We love underdogs,
always
and we
comes back to
love
Bonnie
we love
Tyler.
scrappy underdogs who have idealistic takes. And a lot of these companies had those until they didn't, and now they're monolithic. They're huge, and I
mean,
think
be
kids
honest,
rebel
like,
against that. I do, and
when
I'm 55.
When I graduated high school, we were in the middle of a recession. The U.S. was in the middle of a
Yeah.
recession. There was a lot of angst, and there was a lot of. I remember complaining about big companies offshoring, their
Yep.
businesses, laying off people. What about us new guys that are trying to get in?
Also, Gen Z's buying houses at a faster rate than millennials.
Yeah, which is weird. Very
Yeah.
weird. I don't know how they're
It's the
affording it.
millennials complaining about the housing.
My
more so
daughter,
than-
I will say this one thing. My daughter got mad at me the other day because I said,
Yeah.
I made a comment that I always thank AI LLMs for something they did. If they edited a big paragraph for me and made it shorter, I say
Yeah.
thank you, and it'll always say, you're welcome. Let me know if I can do anything else. And she says, every time you thank it, that's like a bottle, that's like one of these 16-ounce bottle of water. Jeez, don't tell me that. I don't want to know
I
how much
don't
it costs to
understand,
cool
but-
anything.
That's
I
the
don't-
resources required for
the
it to
idea,
respond to
the
that.
idea
I
is that
see, I
suddenly
see.
we're concerned about the energy the internet takes because of AI.
Yeah,
I mean,
So
that's not-
you're
I mean,
saying thank you.
That's
too
not
often.
true. I mean, I remember when the Google search thing, they did this lump of coal is what
But
it takes every time.
DeepSeek fixed it. It's super efficient. It does. It's
It went all
yeah,
back the
we're
other way
fine
now. So yeah, now it's only a cup of water. It's fine.
All right. Well,
It's an ice cube, Scott.
we could talk about this all day, but we like to hear from all of you. So, in that vein, let's check out the mailbag.
Samuel had some good thoughts on our discussion about X and Visa. Well, it's X's money transfer service that they plan to launch later this year. And the story was that they have at least signed up one credit card company to be part of that. You ideally want all the credit card companies if you want to do one of these things. Samuel said, you mentioned some of the popular apps that you currently use in the US. You've mentioned them on the show before. And every time you do, it makes me wonder why there isn't a simpler solution. In Canada, we use a system called Interac, which integrates directly with our banks. So if I want to send an e-transfer to anyone, all I need is their email address or phone number and my bank app. I believe Interac is also responsible for in-store debit card transactions, but not exactly sure how that works. If X brings their new money sending feature to Canada, though, I'm not sure it would be very popular because of how easy our current way of doing things is. We also have heard similar comments from people in Europe like, well, we have SEPA. Why would you ever use anything else? Honestly, they aren't that different from Zelle, When we talk about Zelle in the US, that is our from your bank easy way. All you need is an email address or a phone number to send somebody something. But we still have other things. So I guess what I would ask Samuel and anyone else in Canada, are there not, do people only use Interac? They never use PayPal, they never use Venmo or some other app for money transfer. Because if that's the case, then you're right. But if it's not the case, then X has as good a chance at anybody at taking that other part of the market.
We also got a similar email from Raven saying, I live in the Bahamas. Venmo, not a thing here, nor is Zelle. It's because of restrictions on our banking system here. But something like you were talking about with Visa would definitely work in the Bahamas because Venmo or Zelle, not options. Just thought I'd give you my perspective.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's a misunderstanding of the story, unfortunately. And I sent Raven a note about this. The Visa integration is just, here's a way for you to put money into the X account, exactly the same as Venmo. So if you're not allowed to have Venmo, you might not be allowed to have X. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. Maybe they'll figure out a way to integrate into the Bahamian banking system.
Remember, if you have thoughts on anything that we talk about on the show or anything we might talk about on a future show, please do send it our way. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
I want time travelers to send us comments on stuff we haven't talked about yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
I would love that.
Anybody
they're
could
out
do
there.
it. It's our audience.
You know they're out there. The problem is when they out themselves, then now everybody wants to time travel, and then it's all
Scott Johnson, you are already a time traveler. Don't act like you're not.
We know.
When you aren't time traveling, where can we find you?
Well, I settle down occasionally into a brand new place. Not really a place, but I have a link that's very easy to remember, frogpants.club. And it's designed to be kind of all things newsletter. I'm going to start putting comics up there. I already have. There's a few up there. The comics are going to start being a little more, I don't know, pulled from today's headline. That includes tech and that sort of thing.
Editorial cartoon.
Yeah, I've got one all about OpenAI freaking out about DeepSeek coming up in the next day or so. So those sorts of things, newsletter content, of course, and the podcasts are going up on the paid tier. So that's all still kind of tweaking its way out, still trying to figure out my best sort of footprint there. But if you do want to check out what I have going on there, just go to frogpants.club. There's also a link at frogpants.com. Either way, you're square.
By the way, Cornpone Telephone is a time traveler and says, I don't like your stance on brain transplants next year. So,
all right. Well,
Well, thank you.
Going to rethink that.
Focusing on the now, during the show, folks in our Discord and Twitch chat and YouTube can go to dtns.showbot.tv and submit titles. Saray TW leading the way with For Goodness Scrape.
Nice. Love it.
For goodness scrape. That's
Badfink right behind with Scrapey Doo. And then Stoic Squirrel, who scrapes the scrapers.
Roger didn't like Scrapey Doo, apparently.
I mean, I don't like Scrappy Doo either, but that's
No, Scrappy Doo is the worst
Yeah, it
creature
was-
in the world. It's the worst.
I like
character.
Zoe Briggs Bacon's Who Are We Mad At?
it's true. Like, what are we mad at?
Let's just all agree. Who are we mad at again?
Every day is a fresh
Yeah.
hell.
Yep.
The touche language model from Saray. That's a good one too. Big thanks to everybody who submitted these titles and voted on them at dtns.showbot.tv. Saray is leading, but did they get the title, Sarah?
Indeed. Saray TW runs away with it with For Goodness Scrape. But I mean, kudos to everybody. You guys had
Good
some
titles.
fun today.
Good
You had
titles
some
today.
fun today. If you find yourself needing more DTNS in your life, I mean, and why wouldn't you? While you're out and about, chilling at home, all the things, we've got stuff for both scenarios at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. You can pick up a mug, a t-shirt, a mouse pad. We have new DTNS logos on them. So
if you like the DTNS Live logo, wear it.
Yeah, exactly. We wear it loud and proud, as we will as well. They're good looking and a good way to support us and our show. So thank you in
Look
advance.
at your mouse. Look at your mouse right now. Okay, everyone? I just want you to look at your mouse.
I don't
It
have a
looks
mouse,
lonely.
Tom.
It looks lonely.
I have a trackpad.
You're not helping. Look at pretend you have a mouse and look at it. It needs a DTNS Live mouse pad. Whether you have a mouse or not, get a DTNS Live mouse pad.
It also makes a good coaster for large bowls.
I think a mouse pad works
like a little heating pad.
under a trackpad as well.
It does. It does. That is a very good point.
Yeah. All right.
Also, big thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We've got folks watching us on LinkedIn. We've got people watching us on YouTube. It looks like Laminar Rainbow stepped up today with a super sticker or super chat. Thank you, Laminar Rainbow. Laminar Rainbow says, thank you for your coverage. Well, thank you for your super chat. You're the best.
And indeed.
Also, big thanks to everybody over on Twitch like Taz Jr. 212-34390 who followed us 20 minutes ago. JROM20 resubscribing for the 64th month. S. Snyder 3 gave us a follow. Zoe with some bits. Technomensch with some bits. And yes, I did get your email. GPEG 84 for the 51st month at Tier 1. We got follows from Great Red Shark, Rapscallion, and Cool Sailings over the past 24 hours as well.
Those are cool names.
Sounds like aftershave.
I like it.
I bet they smell like aftershave.
I mean, anything rapscallion, I'm like, okay. Sounds
Some
fun.
people call them rap green onions, but they're really rapscallion.
Goodness gracious.
Just a reminder, everyone, we are a little punchy today, but you can watch us live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2100 UTC, and you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow, and we'd love to have you joining us. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.